Welcome back to the Engage podcast. Ryan Argenta here. My guest today is on the cover of this month's Airline Pilot magazine. He's an award-winning committee chair, having just won the Air Safety Forum's Aviation Security Award. Please welcome Bryan Patchen. He's the chairman of the Aviation Security Committee. Bryan, a first-timer to the show, we're so glad to have you. Welcome to the Engage podcast, and congrats on the award.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so your office that you sit in the MEC building is pretty close to the studio, and you always walk by and you've always got something going on. And I feel like aviation security really affects pilots every day, but we may not realize that all kind of flows back to you and your committee. So give me an overview of what your committee does, aviation security, and who you are and how you got involved.
All right, appreciate that. Yeah, I'm the aviation security chair. I've been in the seat for about 2.5 years. Been on the committee for about 7, so it's been a bit. You know, you talked about the office and the building. I'm a squatter in the offices because I'm a volunteer. So I just every once in a while will come in the office, catch up, interact face with people, close the loop on some issues that we've got. Day to day, aviation security. We have 6 members of the team right now, potentially expanding shortly. But day to day, we work with the pilots that have issues, whether it be KCM, security concerns on layovers, security concerns in airports, or incidents, which is always a big thing. If you're an international pilot, you're out in the country and something happens that you're not familiar with, generally we have a way to get in touch with the RSOs at the embassy and link them in and get you the help you need through that. We also do work through National to use their resources and support pilots and their families when they're outside of the company jurisdiction. So if you're somewhere and there's a security incident and you're not on official duty, when you're out with your family, we can still help you in those cases. So connections around the world, ties to National, and we're here to help with all your security concerns.
Yeah, that's impressive. And thanks for keeping us safe and aware, right? And informed. And you're going to talk about the ways that you can keep pilots safe and notified of security incidents or issues while you're out on layovers or out, like you said, out with your family. And we'll get into that in a sec. Aside from all this, you're on the 76400. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, 76400. So I'm flying mostly Europe. Yeah, so I get to go around the world, and it's always interesting because I see the incidents that we're running into. So we had some layover issues in Dublin. I just so happened I had some trips there. I was able to go in person and check them out. Same thing in London and a few other places. So it's a good fleet to be on because a lot of our international concerns for security and safety come up, and I'm able to actually go and check them out in person.
That's great to know. And I know your team, they're all pilots and they span various positions and categories. And so, you know, you're talking international, which is usually where a lot of the incidents happen, but also domestic stuff there too. And I kind of want to shout out because you have a lot going on. You're a humble person to begin with, which we all appreciate, but you've also got your plate full. Besides flying and aviation security, you're the vice chairman of, and I love this. This is a plug for another podcast that I want to do, but a crew rest optimization team, which is a super interesting thing for everybody. And that'll have to be another episode. But then you're also doing hotel security as the subject matter expert for their security. So it seems like you've got your plate full.
Yeah, I'm one of those chronic volunteers. I can't say no to much. So I end up volunteering at just about everything and try to keep my knowledge level up so that way I can help out. A lot of overlap, especially between safety and security. So it's great to have those interactions with other divisions and other groups. So that way we can make sure that we're not either doubling the work and have 2 committees on it, or we're not missing something, assuming somebody else is doing the work.
Yeah, I get it, man. You know, it's like the reward for good work is more work.
There you go.
Thanks for that. Well, let's dive in. Let's roll up our sleeves. I know one of the topics that you work with and interact with often, and one of the hot topics for pilots is KCM, known crew member. Can you give us a update on what is going on, right? As far as I know, TSA was rolling out their own program that was going to be different. We're subject to tons of what we consider randoms, which, you know, the joke is the random is not getting the random now. Bring us up to speed on that.
So you're starting with a softball here. All right. So yeah, KCM, obviously a lot of reports of incidents, a lot of contention between the pilots and the TSOs out there. the big picture, starting off with the new program. So a couple of years ago, TSA said they were going to come up with a new replacement for KCM. So it was supposed to be expedited crew access was the original name for it. That got developed and that got moved back. It was supposed to be, I think, about a year and a half ago when they fielded it. They revised it. They changed it to crew member access point, CMAP. Said November of 25 was going to be the fielding date. Since then, we've had the administration change, we've had government shutdown, we've got all kinds of changes in the organization, but we also have technology issues. They realized that that was not achievable in the timeline that they wanted. The vision was basically a global entry type system. So you go up to the terminal, they look at your face, they say, yep, you're supposed to be here. And either the red door opens or the green door opens. If the green door opens, you're cleared. If the red door opens, you go put your stuff on the scanner. So it was actually supposed to be a benefit to the pilots. TSA was going to own the database. Right now, they basically, every time you swipe your badge, it goes back to the database of your airline and make sure that you're still an active crew member. Well, that takes some time. Sometimes there's connectivity issues. Sometimes the databases are stale. So all those things they were trying to fix. That is on hold indefinitely right now. One, because like I said, the technology, and two, because the focus just isn't there right now. So KCM is not going away. Even when this new program comes, KCM is not going away. It's just changing a name and it's a new version. So I anticipate at some point in the future this will happen, but they do not have any specific dates or times or even specifics on how the program is going to work. The good news is ALPA has been involved in the meetings and the discussions, the ALPA national folks. So hopefully, as we move forward, if they continue to take our input, we can actually develop the program to be beneficial to the crew members as well as secure, which meets the intent. As far as random rates, yep, you're right. I look at it exactly what you said. It's a coin toss every time. So if I don't get random, that's a good day. If I do get random, I thank the TSO and say, have a nice day. And I go and put my bags on the scanner because I know the TSO is not the enemy in this. I know they're doing their job. They've been told what they're doing. They're just pressing a button on the computer. If it comes up as you're random, you're random. So they're not really the ones to engage with. And that's a big thing to remember. When I was in the Air Force, I was always told never argue with the 18-year-old with a gun, so the
Right.
folk,
Yeah, that's solid advice.
yeah. But
And
yeah, so yeah, there are screening supervisors available. So if there's an issue, there's always you're always allowed to elevate it, but you're never going to win in an argument with a TSO, and you're also always on camera, including audio. So we've had pilots that have made statements, and then after the fact, the audio gets reviewed and say, well, that's not exactly right. But we've also had some that were like, yeah, that is exactly what happened. Thanks for the report. But staying professional is key. So that way you can always look at the video and feel justified by what happened versus getting that feeling of dread, like, oh, probably shouldn't have done that.
right. Yeah, that's good to know as well. So I want to back up for one quick second because one, it sounds like a really positive improvement with the CMAP program once that's rolled out, maybe in a few years. But for now, pilots can know that it's just KCM as we know it. The random rate is unchanged. It'll just continue the way we're experiencing it now, and be polite, right? Be professional. Can you clarify when you are random, if you show up to the airport in the morning and you get a random and you go through the scanner and regular screening, and then let's say you leave the airport and you come back through security for, I don't know, your commuter flight, you're still random, isn't it, for 24 hours?
It is a set amount of time. So the TSA doesn't publish exact time. So whether it's a calendar day or it's 24 hours from the swipe, the idea behind it is they're not walking you to a screener. They're not making sure that you're going through security. So they don't want people to go scan their badge, get random to walk away, go somewhere else, scan the badge again, and then get in. Because obviously that defeats the purpose of the random checks. But yes, you do stay in there for a specific amount of time, and once you're flagged. So if you
Yeah,
get
that
your
makes sense.
badge, you're scanned 3 times in a row. The third time you're random. You're going to stay random until that time frame is over.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of the expectation you can understand. Because I've been in line with, and somebody gets a random, they're like, "Oh, this is the third time today." It's like, well, yeah, man. I think it's all day.
It is. There you go.
What's your advice for pilots who have an issue with either a TSO or with the random, maybe the screening? What what's your advice for pilots? Is there any recourse, or how can we handle this?
There's a lot of options. So the first option is if it's not illegal, it's not inappropriate, comply with the screening and write it up. So you can send a dart. You can send there's a way to do a complaint to the TSA about screening, and they actually look at these things. They check them out. If I get a dart, I actually have an address, the email address at the TSA that I can send the report into, de-identified, or with the specifics depending on the incident. And I get a response, and they actually engage. So that's a good thing. They're listening to us. They want to fix it. The TSA in general does not want to break the rules. They want to have everybody standardized, but you have new people, right? So they have new people coming in. Training varies from place to place, so some things are missed, just like pilots, right? That's why we go to recurrent, and that's why we get all these updates. So that's the first thing, comply and write it up. If it's something that is not legal, like say you're an FFDO and they say you need to put your bag on the scanner, no. You say, I need to talk to a screening supervisor. Screening supervisor will come over, and generally they're more aware of what's going on and they'll fix it. So there's a couple of different things to do. The bottom line though is if you want to get into the secure area, they own access. So TSA is in charge of letting people into the airport. So if you choose not to comply and you choose not to go through the scanner or do whatever it is they tell you to do, and it's within the scope of the law, you just aren't going to go in today because they don't have to let you in.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, get a name, maybe a badge number, be polite and professional, and then send a dart to Brian at Aviation Security, and you'll help the pilot walk through that process, right? And because without a name or without a badge number, it's kind of like saying, "Oh, you work for Delta? Do you know John Smith? He's a pilot."
Yeah, well, exactly.
Or
I'm
like,
glad you brought that up because that is the biggest biggest issue we've got. Is normally I'll get a report. It doesn't have a date, time, location, or a name on it. And it just says, I went through TSA in Atlanta and I got randomed and this happened. And so then I have to respond and go, hey, give me date, time, location, badge number, or name of the TSO. And 90% of the time, I don't get a name. So what that does to the TSA is it gives them a highlight that, hey, there's an issue. This is going on, but they can't fix it. They can do like a general broadcast. It's like one of those emails you get, hey, this happened in Delta. Don't do that again. That's not as efficient as saying, hey, Ryan, you screwed this up. Here's the retraining for you.
right.
So that's really what we ask. If you can get the details and you can get it in the initial dart, that helps a lot because that cuts the timeline down. And I can get a turn back from the head office there at TSA. And like I said, they normally fix it pretty quick. I also have a good relationship with the folks in the Atlanta airport. And this is something we're working on the security side to expand. The safety side, they've got airport safety liaison program, and they've had that for years where they integrate and they work anytime there's a safety issue or construction going on, they make sure that we're involved and aware. And we're using that as a model for the security side, and we're trying to make our connections. So I've had success in Atlanta where I got a text from one of the reps that said, hey, I just had an issue where they wouldn't let me go through KCM out of uniform. I texted the head of screening at Atlanta Airport, and within 2 minutes it was fixed. And that's really
Wow.
what we're angling for. We really want to
Okay.
make it so, it's in everybody's best interest for it to work. It's just sometimes the bureaucracy gets in the way.
Yeah. A bureaucracy with the government. Yeah, I mean, that's great to know. And the fact that we're supported by you in that regard. So yeah, that's great info. I want to turn briefly to, we talk KCM and screening, US locations, international screenings can be pretty varied in their processes. And, every country or every airport has their own rules, it seems. So do you have any info for pilots about, an issue with screening in some countries? Or we've heard stories of, what you call like your morning rub down, right? I always look forward to my morning rub down in London, but aggressive pat downs, or, are you giving consent to these, and what can pilots do who feel uncomfortable with a screening in a foreign country?
Yeah, good question. And it is different. For those that are domestic pilots, you go through KCM and you get secondary and you're like, oh, this is horrible. They haven't been to Dublin. They haven't been to London, where you get the no kidding pat down. First thing to note is a lot of these scanners, a lot of these devices are more sensitive than the US side. So Dublin, for instance, I went through it 4 or 5 times with the new scanners. And I realized that, the new scanners were picking up metal or basically items on your body that show up on the scanner, right? So if you have a belt buckle, if you have whatever, well, it was picking up your name tag, your pilot wings, and each epaulette as separate items. So that's 4 items, which triggers a pat down. So I pulled my name tag off the next time I went through there, and that was only 3 items, and I didn't get a pat down. So we're seeing things like that. London, it's big. I mean, taking the pens out of your pocket, taking the things off that you don't need, because otherwise they're forced to do their procedures. And it's not just as simple as, well, you got an alarm on your wings and I see that, so I'm just gonna pat that area. Like in London, it's a full pat down. So I always recommend divesting yourself of whatever you can. So take everything, take the belt off, take the shoes off, if you need to do all those things. That'll help you get past the first wave of screening, so you don't have to do the second. Secondary to that, though, is if you do have that second screening, or if you do have a pat down, especially if you consider it aggressive or it's inappropriate, withdraw your consent. Internationally, your implied consent when you go up to the screening, you're giving them consent to do your screening. You are allowed to say, I withdraw my consent for a screening. I want to talk to a supervisor. So this isn't just a trivial thing that you want to exercise it just to get out of screening, because you may not get out on time at that point. But if it's something that's aggressive and that's something that's inappropriate, then yes, put a stop to it. Tell them you withdraw your consent. They'll bring your screening supervisor. A lot of places you probably get a Delta rep come over, figure out what's going on. And again, they've got the cameras, they've got the recordings, so they should be able to justify the incident.
Okay. Yeah, this is great info, and this is exactly why we're doing this. So yeah, thanks for that, Brian. And if people have follow-up questions, or you need more information, like, feel free to reach out to the Aviation Security Committee, send them a dart, and they're great at responding and giving you all this great info. So don't hold back there. You mentioned briefly FFDOs. What is the deal with, I think training's on hold and there's some issues getting slots for new qualifications?
Yeah, so there was a little bit of turbulence in this program area. So our FFDO training is done with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. So different spots are available and different demands. So the current administration wanted more focus on other federal agencies. So they were going to reduce our spots, but that turned out to get resolved. So that was not an issue. So we got all our spots back, and then the government shut down. So right now we're on hold. We are slated to have a full load of classes this year. So there should not be a backlog of dates. So if you want to be an FFDO, get your application in there, get it started, and hopefully things get resolved fairly quickly and we can get the training going again. I will say, though, for those that have been FFDOs for a while, there's a new program, the Senior FFDO program, which is a little more advanced. It gives you a little different access to training, things like that. Most of it's SSI, so I can't go into the specifics, but if you've been a FFDO for say 10 years and you want to up your game a little bit, definitely look into it, and we'll see about getting you into the spot.
Okay. And if you don't know what FFDO is, ask a pilot. We'll leave it at that, right? Speaking of guns, do you have anything to do with secondary barriers?
Yes, I do have a little bit to do with secondary barriers. So I work with one of the committees I'm involved with, the career rest optimization team. One of the heads of that on the company side is in charge of secondary barriers. So I talk to him every chance I get on that. And they also bring it up at our international flight optimization team meeting, which is another company meeting we do. But yeah, I mean, secondary barriers has been an issue for a while, right? This is the 9/11 Commission. That was one of the recommendations. We got slow rolled, finally showed up in the 2018 FAA reauth bill, and they didn't set a date until a little while later, which was last summer. So summer of 2025, airlines pushed back a little bit and got an extension. They wanted more. They gave them a year extension. So bottom line is secondary barriers, we're in favor of them on the security side. Anything that can slow down somebody, whether it's ill intent from the terrorism perspective or just a mental health thing. It doesn't really matter the intent. It matters that when the doors open, there's a barrier between us and somebody that might want to do us harm. So as of next summer, all new airplanes will be arriving with the secondary barriers. We do have secondary barriers on some of our airplanes already. The 330 is a big one. And there's some back and forth on procedures and how it should be versus how it is. And I'm not going to get into that level because that's not my world, but I know
Okay, because
that
that's what, yeah. I guess two points because there's so many questions. But first, really, the clarification there is that the mandate for secondary barriers are on all newly constructed aircraft. So I hear all the time like, oh, they're gonna take all the 737s off the line and put a secondary barrier on. It's like, no, new ones coming off the line, the new 321s, new 330s, the 350s coming off the line, right? So we're not like retrofitting old airplanes with these barriers.
we aren't yet. So
Okay.
that's the future. So there's a push to get the retrofits in, and my understanding was the bill passed, and it's still awaiting a deadline, basically. So kind of like where we were for the last one. We don't have a deadline, we don't have an implementation date, but it should be coming. And at that point, we are going to have to retrofit, and it'll probably be, I would be surprised if it was in the next 5 years. It's probably going to be outside of 5 years. But the company is looking at it. The company is looking at both the new construction and the certification and the retrofit. And it's not easy. It's not a
Yeah.
just, take
That's a
this
big
thing off the
undertaking, right?
shelf and yeah, exactly. So there's structural concerns, there's all kinds of issues. The FAA is obviously involved, which always makes it even more fun trying to figure out why can't I just keep the door closed? Well, because the FAA says you can't, that kind of thing. So we're going to work through it. I'm hoping to stay engaged at our level, but at national level, we do have representatives from the security side that go to the meetings and have been out to Boeing and Airbus and have seen all the mock-ups, and they're in the loop on what's going on. So if we hear more about it, we'll definitely feed the info your way.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. That'd be awesome. Because, as you know, on the wide body fleets, especially with the procedures, and I know you don't want to go down that path, so we won't, but sometimes it doesn't make sense. I'll
Well,
leave it.
exactly. And there have
I'll
been
leave.
the aircraft that have had the barriers for a while. They're had procedures, and now they're changing the procedures, and there's pushback. But it's a fine line between, for the pilot side, you're like, I'm a 330 pilot. This is my airplane. This is what I do. Well, all those flight attendants back there, some of them may have been flying a 737 yesterday, so they don't necessarily know your airplane. And that's really what they're trying to work through is there's a balance between what's best for a specific airplane, what's best for the entire flight attendant in flight force to know, one procedure. So we'll work it out. We'll continue the dialogue. Hopefully there'll be a little bit of give and take, and we'll get it through the FAA and we'll be ready to go.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. We'll look forward to those updates for sure. And, I'm sorry we waited so long to do a podcast because this is awesome info. And again, I always see you walking up and down that hallway and you've always got something going on and it's interesting stuff. And so I don't know if you have a war story or talk to pilots about, things to look for, or even if they're just like friendly reminders on layovers for safety and security things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big world. So, just basic security, basic awareness, right? So if you're going on a layover, do you need the $20,000 watch? Do you want to be walking around with that on the streets? And then I'll have a pushback and say, well, it's not really a $20,000 watch. It's just a $500 watch I bought in Turkey or whatever. Well, it still looks like a $20,000 watch. So a guy's going to see that and he's going to go, you're a target. And we've had issues where it's not even on the layovers. I've heard guys say that, oh, I just put it in the safe in my hotel room. It's like, well, we've had some issues in South America where there's a spotter in the airport. And so they'll be standing when you come out of security and you're looking for your van driver, they're looking for pilots with watches. They see them and they either follow you to your hotel, or there was a case where there was a crew carjacked. And it's not all Delta. Obviously they get all the feedback from all the different carriers in Alpha, but it's that kind of thing, right? You're walking around with something that somebody else wants. It's quick and easy, so they will target you and they'll take it. We've had several issues and incidents with it. iPhones as well, just general phone awareness. If you're walking down the street with a map on your phone, not paying attention, just holding onto your phone, somebody's going to take it out of your hand. It's happened all over the world. It happens a lot in London. Snatch and grabs are a big thing down there, especially in the tube. There's signs up everywhere. It's easy. There's no threat to them. They come by on a scooter or a bike and they grab it out of your hand. We even had a pilot lose a phone in a taxi cab with the window down. He was stopped in traffic, had his phone out, and somebody came by on a bike and grabbed it out of his hand. So just awareness of that, make sure you're putting the phone away when you're not actively needing it for directions or something. When I'm walking down the street, it's probably overkill, but I'll pull the phone out, I'll turn, basically back to the wall, kind of look around me, and I'll use my phone, figure out my next turn next direction, put my phone away, and I'll continue walking. And I've so far been all right with that. Never had an issue. It's the other big one is, and we have this happen to us a lot. Your bag, flight gear. Your flight gear is your flight gear. Your flight gear is not your range bag. Your flight gear is not your hunting bag. It's not your moving bag. It's your flight gear. So if you don't put anything bad in your flight gear, it won't be there when you go to security. The number of times we've had people caught with, either a firearm, knives, ammunition, whatever, going through TSA. And then the answer is, well, I didn't know it was in my bag because I used it somewhere else. Just don't use it somewhere else. We're all, even a new hire Delta pilot can afford to have a specific bag that's only used for the flight gear. And
I
that'll
see
keep
what
you out
you're
of
saying.
trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? You double use your bag to go camping, and you've got some remnant explosives from when you were buck hunting, and then you take it through security and it alarms, right? So we're back to screening. But yeah, right. So like common sense, I know everybody's kind of chuckling right now, listening like, oh, who's the idiot that loses their phone or gets swiped and snatched in London or whatever? And it's like, I get it. I can see it happening. But yeah, be smart. I have an iPhone 12 mini, so I'm like hoping somebody swipes that. But anyway, yeah, just be smart.
If you don't need it, don't take it, right? If you don't need the expensive stuff, don't take it on the layover. Um,
Yep.
then you don't have to worry
Yep.
about putting it in the safe. I don't personally lock my passport and things up in the safe because I figure that, if they're already in the room, they're going to get it. But that doesn't mean you can't do that. And
Yeah.
also, I don't have anything other than the IDs and things like that. I don't have anything on my layover that is valuable enough for somebody to take it. So if they steal my company tablet, I think I know where I can get another one.
Yep. Smart move. We're still talking layovers, whether international or domestic. And I just feel like we're in a environment where things happen and a lot of events, and there's a lot of protests and sometimes riots. There could be a security incident. How does your committee transmit information to pilots who are either on layovers or, like you mentioned, you're just out with your family? And I'm going to plant the seed here. You've been pitching an app called Factal, and I stiff armed you the first time, and then we set it up, and I'm like, oh, actually, this is pretty useful. Pitch Factal. Tell me about that.
All right. Yeah. So Factal is a great asset to us. So Alpha National a few years ago reached out to this company, Factal, and just kind of as a trial basis, hey, what can we do for our pilots? And basically what the app does is it takes information from all the sources out there that are available. And it doesn't just relay it. It has, they have editors on staff. So there's always an editor or usually 3 editors on staff that'll go and correlate it. So if they see something on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, and somebody says, hey, there's a fire in London, that's just a trigger. That's not an announcement for them. So that'll just let them point their assets over there. They'll reach out to their sources. They'll look at other sources. And once it's credible, they'll send out an alert. So that'll come to you as a proximity alert if you have Factal with the location and gate, open on it. So as you're walking down the streets of London, you'll get a pop-up that says, hey, building 0.1 miles from you is on fire. The rescue's responding. That should be enough for you to go, you know what, maybe I'll go down this other street. Same thing with rioting. I mean, I was in Paris and I was walking down the one side of the river and I saw protesters showing up. And it was funny enough, it was the pensioners. They didn't want to work past 62, which is completely different than us who, we have people that want to keep working.
Meanwhile, pilots are clawing and scratching a state of 67.
Exactly. But yeah, so
I
I'm
learned
walking
the
down
French.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so walking down the street and I see them setting up. Okay, no big deal. There's protests all over the world. Well, I'm walking back and I got a Factal alert that said rioting in progress, barricades on fire. And I looked at the map and I'm like, oh, I can just go across the river. So I went across the river and I walked and I could see the fires and the rioting,
Wow.
but I wasn't in
Okay.
it. So it took me out of that location, which is great. So it's just, Factal doesn't track you. It doesn't keep your location. The only thing it uses a location for is to give you those nearby alerts. And as soon as it overwrites it, it overwrites. It doesn't save anything. So it just keeps pinging. It'll give you, based on your location. It also lets you choose 3 locations if you're choosing as well. So, if you have a spouse and, it's, their job location, you could do your kids' school, you could have your home, whatever you want, and you'll get alerts for those locations all the time. So you don't have to be there to get it, which was also good. There's another outside of Factal though. The State Department also has the STEP, the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. And I do this, and even as a Delta pilot traveling under Delta's umbrella, I still do my State Department enrollments because you put in your info, your travel plans in STEP, you will get an alert if there's any kind of, State Department alert out there, but it also lets the embassy know you're there. So if you're in, say, Tel Aviv, October 6th of a couple of years ago, and you're in the STEP program, the State Department knows you're there and things kick off. Well, they know now they have an American in country that they need to help get out of there. And that's not just a work thing, that's a travel thing with your family, or your kids can do it. Anybody can do it. There's no cost to it. It just gives you that peace of mind and lets you know that somebody at least is aware you're there if something happens.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's just through the State Department website, right? The
Yeah.
STEP.
Yeah, travel.state.gov is the source for it. And
Okay.
STEP is the STEP program.
Yeah. And I do want to plug Factal again briefly, since, I tried it out, and that you do pick up to 3 locations. You don't have to pick 3 locations, but you pick up to 3 locations. And I expected some nuisance alerts. Even at home on my iPhone, I get, like silver alert and this alert and that. I'm like, I don't care. And so I was worried about that, but you really don't get them. And it's based on your geographical location. So it's only going to give you info that's kind of within a vicinity of where your phone is or where you are. So that was pretty helpful. But yeah, if you're on a layover, and it works domestically too, right?
Yes,
So
it does. And it's great. I mean, we had crews in Dublin where, there was a pop-up riot, and it was just out of nowhere. They didn't know. They walked to dinner. There was nothing going on. They walked out and they were in the middle of a tear gassed event. And, so it happens fast. And, the world is very dynamic right now, especially. And it's important to be able to at least be aware of your surroundings and trust there's some way to get the info. But to piggyback on that, another one of those layover things that I didn't mention, if you're an international pilot, please just pay the money and get your international plan. I've flown with people that don't pay that $10 a month or whatever it is to get that connectivity. If you're out and about and something happens and you don't have a data plan, or you don't have a phone plan for your cell phone, you're going to have a hard time getting any help. So it's important that wherever you are, that you have connectivity. Nobody's carrying their iPad around on their layover. So,
yeah,
so you have to have some way to get in touch with people. So that's huge.
that's a great point, because I've been that guy, right? I'm like, I'm going to, leapfrog Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi. And then now there's T-Mobile, and there's like a Delta perk discount. So check that out.
There you go. And then, like places like Israel, when the war kicked off, there was GPS jamming, and there was, they were shutting down Wi-Fi and things like that. So you got to be aware of where you are. You can't rely on your device to get, to and from the hotel. You have to at least have a plan so that, hey, if my phone dies or if something happens, how am I getting home tonight? It's the basic skills that we had back in the 90s when we had maps, that it's kind of lost, but, just at least being aware of where to go and how to get where you're going is also important.
Yeah, that's great advice. What else you got, Brian? We've covered a lot. I mean, this is great info for everybody. Is there anything else you want to wrap up with before we break?
Just a little bit more on the Factal side. So the pilots, as ALPA members, you have free access to this app. So I highly recommend to do it. You can also invite friends and family through the app to do it, but you have to use the ALPA link. So the link, it's been in the newsletters. It's been there's been some fast reads out there. If you go to the ALPA website under security, there's a way to sign up for Factal that way. That's the only way it's going to work for you. Otherwise, they don't know that you're an ALPA pilot, and they won't. If you try to go download it off of the App Store and then try to set up an account that way, it won't work. So you got to go through the ALPA gateway basically to do it. And then we also recommend you don't use a Delta email and don't use an ALPA email if you're signing up for the personal app, because it might confuse your access. So Delta also has Factal for their staff, and so it might put you under their umbrella, which isn't really what you want. So just use your personal account and set it up, and that'll work for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any last re-attacks? Pun not intended.
Yeah, hopefully not. No. So, I mean, it's just a big thing. And, my approach to security has always been, we want people to be aware. We don't want them to be scared. right? It just so there's a healthy balance of respect for the threat. If you're out and about in any city, it doesn't matter if you're in London or if you're in Detroit, you're in Atlanta, there's always a threat of some kind. So just general awareness, putting the phone down, looking around. We've been through some training on the security side. Basically, bad guys are looking for soft targets. If you're head down in your phone and you're hands full of bags walking down the street not paying attention, you're what they're looking for. If you're looking around, they don't want anything to do with you because you're now a hard target and they're going to leave you alone. So that's really what we're asking. Just going to be aware, be alert. Don't be in a dark alley at 3 o'clock in the morning in a city you don't know, because bad things are probably going to happen.
Yeah, like my folks said, that nothing good happens after midnight, right?
There you go.
All right, Bryan Patchen, thank you so much, the chairman of the Aviation Security Committee. Man, this was awesome. Thanks so much. And yeah, we'll keep having you back, and you can give us more tidbits and advice and updates, KCM, secondary barriers. I mean, what a wide range of info that you cover. So thanks for what you do. Thanks for keeping us safe, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, Ryan, I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great day.
You bet. Thanks, man.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.